Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 57. Chapter 57. The next day, the Emperor stopped at Wischau, and Villiers, his physician, was repeatedly summoned to see him. At headquarters and among the troops nearby, the news spread that the Emperor was unwell. He ate nothing and had slept badly that night, those around him reported. The cause of this indisposition was the strong impression made on his sensitive mind by the sight of the killed and wounded. At daybreak on the 17th, a French officer had come with the flag of truce, demanding an audience with the Russian Emperor, was brought into Wischau from our outposts. This officer was Savary. The Emperor had only just fallen asleep, and so Savary had to wait. At midday, he was admitted to the Emperor, and an hour later, he rode along with Prince Dolgorúkov to the advanced post of the French army. It was rumored that Savary had been sent to propose to Alexander a meeting with Napoleon. To the joy and pride of the whole army, a personal interview was refused, and instead of the sovereign, Prince Dolgorúkov, the victor at Wischau, was sent with Savary to negotiate with Napoleon if, contrary to expectations, these negotiations were actuated by a real desire for peace. Toward evening, Dolgorúkov came back, went straight to the Tsar, and remained alone with him for a long time. On the 18th and 19th of November, the army advanced 2 days' march, and the enemy's outpost, after a brief interchange of shots, retreated. In the highest army circles from midday on the 19th, a great, excitedly bustling activity began, which lasted till the morning of the 20th, when the memorable Battle of Austerlitz was fought. Till midday on the 19th, the activity, the eager talk, running to and fro, and dispatching of adjutants, was confined to the Emperor's headquarters. But on the afternoon of that day, this activity reached Kutuzov's headquarters, and the staffs of the commanders of columns. By evening, the adjutants had spread it to all ends and parts of the army, and in the night from the 19th to the 20th, the whole 80,000 Allied troops rose from their bivouacs to the hum of voices, and the army swayed and started in one enormous mass 6 miles long. The concentrated activity which had begun at the Emperor's headquarters in the morning, and had followed the whole movement that followed, was like the first movement of the main wheel of a large tower clock. One wheel slowly moved, another was set in motion, and a third, and wheels began to revolve faster and faster, levers and cogwheels to work, chimes to play, figures to pop out, and the hands to advance with regular motion as a result of all that activity. Just as in the mechanism of a clock, so in the mechanism of the military machine, an impulse once given leads to the final result. And just as indifferently quiescent to the moment when motion is transmitted to them are the parts of the mechanism which the impulse has not yet reached. Wheels creak on their axles as the cogs engage one another, and the revolving pulleys whir with the rapidity of their movement. But a neighboring wheel is as quiet and motionless as though it were prepared to remain so for 100 years. But the moment comes when the lever catches it, and obeying the impulse, that wheels begin to creak and joins in the common motion, the result and aim of which are beyond its ken. Just as in a clock, the result of the complicated motion of innumerable wheels and pulleys is merely a slow and regular movement of the hands which show the time, so the result of all the complicated human activities of 160,000 Russians and French, all their passions, desires, remorse, humiliations, sufferings, outbursts of pride, fear, and enthusiasm, was only the loss of the battle at Austerlitz, the so-called Battle of the Three Emperors, that is to say, a slow movement of the hand on the dial of human history. Prince Andrew was on duty that day, and in constant attendance on the commander-in-chief. At 6 in the evening, Kutuzov went to the Emperor's headquarters, and after staying but a short time with the Tsar, went to see the Grand Marshal of the court, Count Tolstoy. Bolkonsky took the opportunity to go in to get some details of the coming action from Dolgorukov. He felt that Kutuzov was upset and dissatisfied about something, and that at headquarters they were dissatisfied with him, and also that the Emperor's headquarters everyone adopted toward him the tone of men who know something others do not know. He therefore wished to speak to Dolgorukov. "Well, how do you do, my dear fellow?" said Dolgorukov, who was sitting at tea with Bilibin. "The fete is for tomorrow. How is your old fellow? Out of sorts?" "I won't say he is out of sorts, but I fancy he would like to be heard." "But they heard him at the Council of War, and will hear him when he talks sense. But to temporize and wait for something now when Bonaparte fears nothing so much as general battle is impossible." "Yes, you have seen him," said Prince Andrew. "Well, what is Bonaparte like? How did he impress you?" "Yes, I saw him, and am convinced that he fears nothing so much as general engagement," replied Dolgorukov, evidently prizing this general conclusion which he had arrived at from his interview with Napoleon. "If he weren't afraid of a battle, why did he ask for the interview? Why negotiate, and above all, why retreat, when to retreat is contrary to his method of conducting war? Believe me, he is afraid of battle. His hour has come, mark my words." "But tell me, what is he like, said Prince Andrew again. "He is a man in a grey overcoat, very anxious that I should call him your Majesty, but who, to his chagrin, gave no title from me. That's the sort of man he is, and nothing more," replied Dolgorukov, looking around at Bilibin with a smile. "Despite my great respect for old Kutuzov," he continued, "we should be a nice set of fellows if we were to wait about and so give him a chance to escape or to trick us, now that we certainly have him in our hands. No, we mustn't forget Suvorov and his rule, not to put yourself in a position to be attacked, but yourself to attack. Believe me, in war the energy of young men often shows the way better than the experience of old cunctators." "But in what position are we going to attack him? I have been at the outpost today, and it is impossible to say where his chief forces are situated," said Prince Andrew. He wished to explain to Dolgorukov a plan of attack he had himself formed. "Ah, that is all the same," Dolgorukov said, quickly, and getting up, he spread a map on the table. "All eventualities have been foreseen. If he is standing before Brünn," and Prince Dolgorukov rapidly but indistinctly explained Weyrother's plan of a flanking movement. Prince Andrew began to reply and to state his own plan, which might have been as good as Weyrother's, but for the disadvantage that Weyrother's had already been approved. As soon as Prince Andrew began to demonstrate the defects of the latter and the merits of his own plan, Prince Dolgorukov ceased to listen to him and gazed absent-mindedly not at the map, but at Prince Andrew's face. "There will be a council of war at Kutuzov's tonight, though. You can say all this there," remarked Dolgorukov. "I will do so," said Prince Andrew, moving away from the map. "Whatever you are bothering about, gentlemen," said Bilibin, who, till then, had listened with an amused smile to their conversation, and now was evidently ready with a joke. "Whether tomorrow brings victory or defeat, the glory of our Russian arms is secure. Except your Kutuzov, there is not a single Russian in command of a column. The commanders are Air General Wimpfen, Le Comte Laugeron, Le Prince Liechtenstein, Le Prince de la Pau, and Fish, and so on, all like these Polish names." "Be quiet, backbiter," said Dolgorukov. "It is not true. There are now 2 Russians, Miloradovich and Doktorov, and there would be a third, Count Arakcheev, if his nerves were not too weak." "However, I think General Kutuzov has come out," said Prince Andrew. "I wish you good luck and success, gentlemen," he added, and went out after shaking hands with Dolgorukov and Bilibin. On the way home, Prince Andrew could not refrain from asking Kutuzov, who was sitting silently beside him, what he thought of tomorrow's battle. Kutuzov looked sternly at his adjutant, and after a pause replied, "I think the battle will be lost. and so I told Count Tolstoy and asked him to tell the emperor. What do you think he replied? But my dear general, I am engaged with rice and cutlets. Look after military matters yourself. Yes, that was the answer I got. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 57. I will now conclude with my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 57. Just like clockwork. Throughout the early chapters of War and Peace, Tolstoy slyly peppers in some of the themes he'll explore in depth later in the second epilogue when he explores his unique theory of history. Today, he's up to it again. Early in the chapter, he compares the operations of the military to the wheels, pulleys, and cogs of clockwork. Just as the mechanism of a clock, he writes, so in the mechanism of the military machine, an impulse once given leads to the final result, and just as indifferently quiescent to the moment when motion is transmitted to them are the parts of the mechanism which the impulse has not yet reached. Curious, then, Tolstoy's use of the clockwork metaphor, because when he returns us to the present narrative, on the eve of the Battle of Austerlitz, a so-called expert makes a prediction about the future, and, just like clockwork, that prediction turns out, as we'll see, to be tragically wrong. Indeed, in this short chapter, one character manages to offend two of today's most popular thinkers on probability. The character is Dolgorov, and his first offense is against Nate Silver's problems of forecasting. It's Dolgorov that goes to meet with Napoleon today to discuss war issues. Dolgorov returns to the Russian camp later and is interviewed by Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew asks about whether or not it's wise to attack the French. Dolgorov replies, relying on too much noise and not enough signal, that of course it is. Napoleon is weak and certain to lose. Certain, he says. Well, we'll just see how that works out. Prince Andrew, however, is skeptical. He proposes an alternative plan of advance. Then, in one of the funniest and most tragic passages in the novel, Dolgorov tells Prince Andrew that his plan sounds good and might even be as good as Weyrother's, but for the disadvantage that Weyrother's has already been approved. Bureaucracy, ladies and gentlemen. Dolgorov's second defense violates Nassim Nicholas Taleb's rule of thumb that, quote, older is almost always more solid, but older is not necessarily perfect, end quote. Dolgorov disagrees. It's his contention that the energy of youth is far better to consult in war than the wisdom of age. Sad he should think so. Kutuzov, one of the old generals, one who counsels a Fabian patience and warns against a premature attack, actually turns out to get it right. When asked how he thinks the battle will go, Kutuzov despairs that the Russians will lose decisively. Worry over the future is often the enemy of a tranquil present. We're so often agitated about the future, whether it's the ecstatic agitation of Dolgorov or the worrisome variety of Kutuzov. We can't ignore the future. It's worth planning for. But, in the end, we have no control over what events may transpire, so it's best to focus our energy on the present. Daily meditation. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied. For he that is wants nothing. The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. Seneca, Letters from a Stoic. All right, that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 57 of War and Peace. Thank you so much for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. Links to all that are below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow we'll be reading and reflecting on chapter 58 of War and Peace. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.